Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen and welcome to my channel. In tonight's card project, I'm going to be creating this very serene scene using an embossing folder. This is the Textured Pine Trees embossing folder from Simon Says Stamp, 3D embossing folder, I should say. And before I do any embossing with it, I'm going to start with an ink blended background. And this is one of my favorite things to do when it comes to using embossing folders, but I'm going to create this very peaceful and serene scene. So I have some Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock, and I'm starting on one end of the cardstock with, I think this was marine color from Simon Says Stamp. And then I'm going to come in on the other side with violet. So I am using flat blending brushes from Altenew. I do tend to reach for these blending brushes when I'm going to be covering an entire panel. Now when I'm doing my ink blending, I am starting off of the cardstock. So on my glass work surface, and I'm gliding onto the cardstock. And I'm going to go very light-handed. I only want really a dusting of ink on here. So once I have that blended, I'm going to place this into my 3D embossing folder. You'll be able to see in person where that fits right into the frame, you could say, to fit your entire piece of cardstock. I took my cardstock off screen and sprayed it with some water on the back side. That's just going to help loosen up the fibers of the paper so it doesn't crack. Now to do these embossing folders from Simon Says Stamp, I'm using my Spellbinders Platinum 6. I have my base plate, kind of that extra shim in there, the embossing folder, and then 3 pieces. I think this might have been 2 pieces at this time of cardstock. Yep, that was the 2 pieces of cardstock. I decided I didn't feel like it was enough pressure, so I added a 3rd piece of cardstock, and then I could tell that that was really pressing down. So that came out perfect. I have this gorgeous impressed design on here. I'll bring it up close so you can see. We have some snow coming down and then these beautiful pine trees, which I am definitely a sucker for pine trees in the wintertime. So I love how that came out and how beautifully it impressed embossed into the cardstock. Now to make these trees really pop off the background, I'm going to come back in with those same colors. So down towards the blue, I came back in with marine, once again using the flat blending brushes. And this is kind of important. I have found that the flat blending brushes are great for this because they kind of skim over the top. So they're catching a lot of the embossed areas that are raised up, and it's going to highlight them just a little bit more. So they're catching a lot more of the color. Now, when I come in with the violet, I am going to do the top, but I'm also going to go down over that blue area. I think that's where the magic really happens with this. I wish I would have used a little bit more blue or it came up a little higher on my card, but it still looks just gorgeous. Now, I'm going to pop in a little bit of a darker color. This is Iris, so it's a darker shade of purple and just kind of has that gradual change from the top all the way down to the bottom of these colors changing up. Now I'm going to add some splatters because you know me, I can't resist my splatters, but instead of a bright white, I'm coming in with this iridescent white shimmer from Hero Arts. I'll have everything linked down below in the video description in case I say the name wrong, but I sprayed a little bit onto my glass work surface and I'm going to just add splatters of that all over the background. Now this is not a really bright in-your-face white. It shows a little white, but it's also very sparkly. So I'm going to go ahead and set that off on the side to dry, and I'm going to work on the sentiment. And a sentiment I wanted to use is joyful. So this has a hot foil plate, but there is also a word die and shadow that you can do instead if you'd rather die cut from cardstock. I was kind of in the mood for foiling. I wanted something nice and shiny on the front of the card. So that's what I will be doing with my Glimmer hot foil system from Spellbinders. The cardstock I'm going to foil on is the specialty cardstock from Spellbinders. I have it trimmed down to fit the sentiment, and I'm taking some matte silver and trimming out a small piece of that to fit the sentiment. So I have my cardstock. I placed my Glimmer foil pretty side up. I put my hot foil plate so it is facing down. I'm going to trim off my excess and then use the best ever craft tape, and I'm going to tape my sentiment down so it's touching the plate and the cardstock so that way it doesn't move. I brought my Glimmer system in for you to see. The green light turned green, or the light turned green, which then I knew that my Glimmer system was nice and hot and ready to go. So I took my plate, flipped it over so the plate is touching the Glimmer system. And then I'm going to bring in my 2 shims, place that on the top, and hit the button. So that light is going to flash green, and when it's done and ready, it's going to be a solid green. And I'll just disengage that and run that entire platform through the Platinum 6 die cut machine. So that foiled my Joyful Sentiment. I went ahead off screen and die cut that out right away, and I also die cut out about 3 more pieces of that shadow layer. It's the shadow layer that's going to die cut out the foiled sentiment. So I'm going to layer this up just using some liquid glue and of course my tweezers, and this is going to give it dimension and help that kind of pop off of my background just a little bit. I'm going to take that background now that it's dry and trim off 1/4 of an inch from each end. So this piece of cardstock is going to end up measuring 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and it's going to leave me a nice border on my card front. One thing I have found to be very helpful when it comes to these embossing folders or the cardstock that has been used with an embossing folder is taking some of these Altenew double-sided adhesive sheets. I trimmed it to the same size as my panel, and I'm placing that on the back. It seems like with what the embossing folder does to the paper when it raises some of those areas, I find that my cardstock my adhesive isn't really sticking very well if I just use a tape runner. I have areas on the back that tend to let loose. So I'm using this double-sided sheet so I have sticky stuff everywhere on the back. Once I removed the backing of that, I'm going to place this on another piece of cardstock cut to that same size and just really press it down. Same thing with that double-sided sheet. You just really want to press it down onto the background. I have a top folding card base here that is going to be 4 1/4 by 5 inches. I'm taking a tape runner and adding it to the back of my panel. And then I can line this up over the front of my card base. So it's going to have this beautiful white edge going around it. So once I have that in place, I'm just going to push down to secure that to the front of the card. And then I'm going to take the sentiment that I have layered together. I'm adding liquid glue to the back of that and placing this on the front of the card. Once I have that in place, I am going to set something heavy on it and let that sit for a few minutes because this is a textured background. So I want to make sure I'm giving that a lot of time to settle and attach itself. And now I have this beautiful, serene scene. I know a lot of people are not looking forward to winter because of the cold, but I personally just enjoyed the beauty of it. And that foiled sentiment is a perfect finishing touch. I hope you enjoyed today's card inspiration. I will have all of my supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you again real soon.